From the Oklahoman newsroom, this is a Thunder update. I'm Jenny Carlson. All of our Thunder post-game coverage is brought to you by J. Marshall Square, Oklahoma City's only big house apartment community. Anthony Slater joins us on the phone to talk about this. Anthony, hot off the presses, the last 2-minute report from last night's Thunder-Spurs game, Game 2. And Anthony, the NBA does this for every game. After every game, it puts out one of these. I'm sure most are much shorter than this 2-page, single-space, small-type report that came out from last night. But break down what you see here in this last 2-minute report.
5 missed calls in 13 and a half seconds, which has got to be a record for sure. 4 basically at the same time. I mean, the one that starts it all, which kind of wasn't caught by Ken Maurer last night when he talked post-game to the pool reporter, was that Manu Ginobili starts it off kind of by stepping over the line, which should have been a delay of game right there, and then you restart the clock and it's a warning. Instead, that doesn't get called. Dion Waiters then, I guess, feels he's being crowded and does a play that the refs have now tweeted out and said they've never seen before and need to implement in their planning. Maybe it will be known as the Dion Waiters rule moving forward. But he reaches across the line as the inbounder, forearm shivers Ginobili out of the way, right in front of a referee. Shockingly, doesn't get called. Then he jumps up in the air to inbound it. And the refs have actually ruled he's allowed to jump up in the air, although most people thought he wasn't. Then they throw it towards half court. The Durant-Green, I guess, jump ball, in a sense, happens, and they said no foul on Green. That was a correct no call. But while Waiters was looking and all that was going on with Ginobili and Waiters on the sidelines, they have now ruled that Patty Mills fouled Steven Adams on, during the inbound, and I believe it was Kawhi Leonard fouled Russell Westbrook grabbing his jersey. So there's 4 missed no calls right there before the ball was even inbounded. And then the anarchy happens with the loose ball, the Spurs 3-on-1, Steven Adams playing, basically looking like there was 8 Steven Adams on the court at once. Eventually, the miss, then the air ball from Patty Mills kind of goes into that mosh pit under the hoop, where the last missed call happens. They say LaMarcus Aldridge was fouled by Serge Ibaka. It went no called. That would have meant 2 free throws for the Spurs, and especially the way Aldridge is playing, that's probably 2 made free throws and the lead. A lot of missed calls, but end result is an escape job. Thunder win in San Antonio, and they come back home with a mission accomplished 1-1 tie.
Yeah, you mentioned Steven Adams, and Anthony, one of the things that isn't on this report but will surely be looked at by the league is a fan who ends up holding on to Steven Adams after he contests that Patty Mills 3. He makes a running leap towards the corner and ends up in essentially the Nicholson seats right there by the court. And it looks like he might have ended up sort of sending a woman, I think, into her seat. Sort of, she was standing, he hits her, she ends up in her seat and ends up holding on to him and is still holding on to him as the play is going on. The way Steven Adams is running around like a crazy person, he probably wanted to get back in there, see if he couldn't contest another shot. But that is not in this report. But it looks to me like there's a lot still to digest. Do you expect the NBA to issue any sort of statement? We heard Ken Maurer, as you referenced, talking about the end of game last night, but he hadn't seen all of this yet, I don't think. So is there any more coming officially from the NBA at this point?
I don't know about the Adams fan thing, if they'll release anything. Kind of from what I've heard, it's a weird view from like the regular vantage point that the camera has, where you don't really know if she's trying to hold Steven Adams back from going to get the rebound, or she just kind of got knocked over and she's trying to hold herself up. It just happens to be bad timing where he's trying to get back into a play. What's going on, and he reacts maybe kind of poorly, pulls his hand away, looks back at her. But it seemed to me the NBA is probably, Adams isn't the kind of guy that'll probably let this linger, and the NBA maybe just kind of ignores it moving forward and expects it to kind of be under the rug.
Lastly, Anthony, you mentioned that may sort of fall by the wayside, but this last 13 and a half seconds is not going by the wayside. It's the talk of the sports world today. It's the talk of social media today. I mean, people are just eat up with this crazy end to this game last night. How far and wide have you seen this whole thing spreading?
I mean, everywhere across the country, as you mentioned, like if you're just online today in the social media world, it's like a constant stream of information, stories, screen grabs, shots. Everyone's kind of looking at it. to me, in a sense, I think it's being overvalued in its kind of in its importance within the game. Because, you know, the Spurs don't get the waiters no call, but they also get a 3-on-1 fast break they would take any day of the week.
Right.
They'd probably take that Mills open three, although Adams gets out and contested. So, you know, I don't think it had a huge effect on the game, but then I think what's kind of, you know, exponentially grown the interest is that you had, like, Chris Webber on the broadcast, like, going off like it was, you know, the wildest thing he'd ever seen and the worst no call. And then Magic Johnson tweeted that it was I think he said it was the worst missed call in playoff history. That's from like an NBA legend. So I think there's been some over-exaggeration of it in a sense, but I mean, it's really in a playoffs that have been pretty boring, a lot of blowouts. Last night's game had everyone kind of hooked, and then that finish just really took it over the top. Everyone's still thinking about it today.
Yeah, definitely. We'll be exploring that deeper in the Wednesday Oklahoman and on News OK. I'll be trying to take the pulse of Spurs fans, and you might be a little surprised to find out they're not overwrought about that end-of-game action that we saw. They didn't think that their team played very well, coached very well, so you want to be sure to check that out in the Oklahoman and on News OK. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.